Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are continuing with our Richard L. Thompson lecture series, where we are going through Sariputa's books, chapter by chapter. We are continuing with Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy. We have here last week Prishni Sutton presented on chapter 3, Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy. And today we welcome and thank Dvija Govinda, Vasyl Semenov, for presenting chapter 4, the vertical dimension. Dvija Govinda has earned PhD degrees in both acoustics and computational mathematics. He has been working at the scientific and production enterprise Delta SPE in the area of telecommunications since 1999. He has been teaching Vedic mathematics and other courses at the Kiev Krishna Consciousness Academy since 2013, and he is currently a visiting professor at the American University in Kyiv. Thank you very much for joining us and for presenting. Dvija Govinda, you may go ahead.
Thank you very much, Lila, for your kind introduction. I feel very awkward and humbled, especially to speak in presence of so many authorities, especially His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj. However, as a matter of duty, I will try my best. So we're talking about chapter 4 of Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy. I selected as epigraph the fragment of Srila Prabhupada's famous letter to Swarupa Damodara in 1976. If we can explain the passing seasons, eclipses, phases of the moon, passing of day and night, etc., then it will be very powerful propaganda. So many topics are addressed in this chapter. It starts with the terminology of 3 and 14 worlds. Then is the discussion about the 7 planets. Then higher dimensional travel in the vertical direction is briefly discussed by Sadaputa Prabhu. The environs of the Earth, meaning basically the subterranean planets. Then the brief discussion of eclipses, and finally the presection of equinoxes. So I will try to make a short overview of what Sadaputa Prabhu presents in this chapter. And I selected one special sentence of Sadaputa Prabhu as maybe Paribhasha Sutra of this chapter. In Vedic cosmology, however, up means toward a celestial north in a direction perpendicular to the plane of Bhumandala, and down means the opposite direction. So this understanding of vertical dimension in the cosmology of the 5th canto, this interpretation by Sadaputa Prabhu is very crucial to the whole chapter and also to his whole book, Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy. But we will discuss this statement in more details during this short presentation. So the first subsection of the chapter is the terminology of 3 and 14 worlds from different points of view. Basically, Sadaputa Prabhu quotes the different statements by Srila Prabhupada. For example, from Srimad Bhagavatam 3, line 28, these 3 worlds are known as Bhu, Bhuvaha, and Svaha, and also by Patala, Martya, and Svarga. Though these 2 sets of three worlds are not identical, as we know. Yes, and Srila Prabhupada also clarifies it in his other statements. The universe is divided into 14 planetary systems. 7 planetary systems called Bur, Bhuvaha, Svar, Mahar, Janas, Tapas, and Satya are upward planetary systems, one above the other. There are also 7 planetary systems downward. Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Tala, Tala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala, gradually one below the other. Srimad Bhagavatam 2:126. Also in another place in the 4th canto, there are 6 planetary systems above Burloka and 7 planetary systems below it. Therefore, the entire universe is known as Chaturdasha Bhuvana, indicating that it has 14 different planetary systems. So, What about Buvar-Loka? Buvar-Loka is, I selected a fragment from the presentation by Radomohan Prabhu, this picture. Above Buvar-Loka planetary system, there is a Buvar-Loka. And above that is Svarga-Loka. It's a heavenly planetary system. So Buvar-Loka is occupies some space between the Bur-Loka, the earthly level, and Svarga-Loka. So this intermediate section is called Buvar-Loka. And also there is Antariksha, which is even between, it's not already Antariksha, it's about few quotes more about Buvar-Loka. I'm not sure I should quote all of this. However, okay, the middle portion of the sky is called Buvar-Loka, as confirmed by both Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti and Srila Jiva Goswami. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that those who develop in the mode of passion are situated in the middle region, meaning Buvar-Loka. In the fourth canto, 429-28, there are three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. Those influenced by the mode of goodness are given places in the upper planetary systems, Brahmaloka or Satyaloka, Tapaloka, Janaloka, and Maharloka. Those influenced by the mode of passion are given places in the Bur-Loka and Buvar-Loka. What about Antariksha? Antariksha is a space between Bur-Loka and Buvar-Loka. Just we read that Buvar-Loka is between Bur-Loka and Svarga-Loka, and between Bur-Loka and Buvar-Loka there is also space called Antariksha. Antariksha, where the sun is situated, at least in the vertical dimension. And also the final quote about Antariksha. Beneath Vidyadhara Loka, Charana-Loka, and Siddha-Loka, in the sky called Antariksha, are the places of enjoyment for the Yakshas, Rakshasas, Pishachas, ghosts, and so on. Antariksha extends as far as the wind blows and the clouds float in the sky. Above this, there is no more air. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 5.24.5. So let's again look at this hierarchy of 14 of Chaturdasha Bhuvana, 14 planetary systems. And now we will talk about the lower planetary systems, the 7 systems which are below the level of Bhumandala. So in 524.7, Shukadeva Goswami says, my dear king, beneath this earth are 7 other planets, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Tala, Tala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala. I have already explained the situation of the planetary systems of Earth. The width and length of the 7 lower planetary systems are calculated to be exactly the same as those of Earth. So, as I understand, it means that such a depiction, description of them as having lower sizes, or maybe this is in a perspective, like some kind of projection. But nevertheless, these lower planetary systems are said to be the same dimension, the same sizes as that of the Earth. I think meaning Bhumandala. What else? Have a few more quotes from this subsection by Sadaputta Prabhu. The first one we already quoted. The geometric projection of these lower walls on the celestial sphere is nearly the same as the projection of Bhumandala. And also, since the Garbhodaka ocean is almost directly beneath the plane of Bhumandala, one can imagine that all points on the celestial sphere south of the projection of Bhumandala should correspond to this ocean. So as I understand it, Sadaputta Prabhu means that Garbhodaka ocean corresponds to what we see in the celestial sky in the southern, when we are in southern hemisphere. Okay, what's next? About 7 planets. Yes, Sadaputta Prabhu says that in Bhagavatam there are very few, if any, descriptions of the Lord's pastimes in any of the planets of solar system. But nevertheless, Bhagavatam gives us brief information, very precise, as we will see, precise information about the behavior of these planets. We will start with the sun. A famous quote about the 3 speeds of the sun. So, while passing toward the north, toward south, and through the equator, in accordance with the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is said that the sun moves slowly, swiftly, or moderately, according to its movements in rising above, going beneath, or passing through the equator, and correspondingly coming in touch with various signs of the zodiac, headed by Makara, Capricorn. Days and nights are short, long, or equal to one another. Very beautiful quote from Srimad Bhagavatam 5.21.3. And what these 3 speeds means, Taputa Prabhu proposes 2, basically, as I understand, very close explanations. I tried also to model it in MATLAB mathematical software. Here, by the black line, I have depicted the path of the sun, and the equatorial plane is depicted in blue color, and also above it and below it are the tropics of Cancer and tropics of Capricorn. And if we perform the stereographic projection, we see that the sun has a trajectory which has a shifted character. Yes, it has a shifted character according to the concentric circles of 2 tropics and equator. And also, it's very interesting that the ratio from the pole to these tropics is 1.71, and it is exactly the same as the ratio of the radiuses of Pushkara Dvipa and Shaka Dvipa. Because in Bhagavatam it is said that the sun moves all the time across the top side of Manasotra mountain. But I believe it's in Mystery of Sacred Universe. So the Taputa Prabhu tells that in Vamana Purana, maybe in Matsya Purana, it is said that the orbit of the sun gradually shifts during the year from the island of Pushkara Dvipa to the island of Shaka Dvipa. And so the ratio of these radiuses of these 2 islands is the same as we obtain when we make this stereographic projection according to the modern, up-to-date parameters of the sun's orbit. Okay, so to what was this picture when this is a fragment from the Murali Gopal's presentation. I took it because I found it very illustrative. So when a point in the right, when the point has a orbit of a larger radius, it can be said that it moves faster because it has to cover the larger distance during the same period of time. So the point B moves faster than the point A. And this also explains why we are talking about the different speeds of the sun during the year. When the sun is far from the center, as in the picture on the left, it moves with the higher speed, and it moves with lower speed when it is in the closest point to the pole, to the center of this circle, in this projection. And it moves with moderate speed during the time of equinoxes, summer and winter. No, not summer, but spring and autumn equinoxes. Am I correct? Equinoxes happen in spring and autumn. Yes. Okay. Okay. This is what about the 3 speeds of the sun. Sadaputa Prabhu also tells that according to modern astronomy, it is also the fact that the sun moves faster along the ecliptic during the northern winter than it does during the northern summer. Yes, this is also a fact which is corroborated by the modern astronomy. Okay, let's see what's also Sadaputa Prabhu discusses the information about the radius of the sun's orbit, not the height of the sun above Bhumandala, but the radius of the sun's orbit. It is said that the sun goes along the Manasotira Mountain, and has an orbit of 95 million Yoginas, which is 760 million miles. And we can compare this with the modern value. Modern value of the distance from the Earth to the Sun is 150 million kilometers. While the data presented us by Srimad Bhagavatam in this verse corresponds to 197 million kilometers. So deviation is about 30%. As a comparison, we can see that Bhagavatam, which is represented here in the fourth line by Puranas, gives closer value to the modern one than, for example, were given by Ptolemy about 2,000 years ago, by Kepler in approximately in 1600, and then Cassini, 1671. Okay, this is what was according to the sun. One more point. Many points are discussed by Sadaputta Prabhu. Very rich chapter in astronomical data and its interpretations about the duration of the day. Also, Sadaputta Prabhu quotes Bhagavatam 5:21:4. When the sun passes through Mesha, Aries, and Tula, meaning Libra, the duration of day and night are equal. When it passes through the 5 signs headed by Vrishabha, Taurus, the duration of the days increases until Cancer, and then it gradually decreases by half an hour each month, until day and night become equal when the sun is in Libra constellation. So I also made a short modeling about the data presented by this verse is shown by a red line, which increases and decreases, and again decreases, and also the blue curve according to the modern data about the duration of the day at the latitude of New Delhi. New Delhi, we see that it corresponds with sufficiently high accuracy. So the Sadaputta Prabhu said that the average error during the year is about 6.6 minutes at the latitude of Delhi. For the Babylon, it's about 9.5 minutes. Why Babylon? Because Sadaputta Prabhu tells that there are some tendencies to ascribe, is it correct verb, to ascribe the Vedic astronomy to the Babylon sources. So some scientists explain that maybe it's discussed in more details in MSU, in Mysteries of Sacred Universe, that the Vedic astronomy was borrowed by Vedic scholars from the Greek and Babylon sources. So for the Babylon, this error would be higher, and this rule also Sadaputta Prabhu doesn't work well during any time of the year. Probably he means for the latitude of Babylon. Okay, and this verse provides a very simple rule for the practical approximation of the duration of the day. So is it all with the sun? Yes. Now we'll talk about the moon. When the moon is waxing, the illuminated portions of it increase daily, thus creating day for the demigods and night for the Pitas. Very mysterious verse, 22nd chapter, verse 9. And Sadaputta Prabhu tells, since some demigods have a day of 360 Earth days, this verse presumably refers specifically to the demigods living on the moon. The simplest interpretation is that these demigods live on one side of the moon, and the Pitas live on the other side. So he makes a conclusion that some connection exists between Pitriloka and the moon, but more research is needed to determine exactly what it is. As for me, I'm not a native English speaker, but very beautifully, as I see, Sadaputta Prabhu, and scientifically explains the current state of the understanding of this verse. So now some numbers in the verse 5:22:9. In this way, the moon passes through each constellation of stars in 30 muhurtas. And Srila Prabhupada explains that by 30 muhurtas here, it covers the entire day. So, what does it mean? What does it mean? It means that moon completes its sidereal orbit. Sidereal orbit means orbit against the background of stars in 27 days, because there are 27 nakshatras, 27 constellations. So it means that the moon has a period, say sidereal period of 27 days. Sadaputta Prabhu, how to say, he says justly, or this is an approximation. I completely agree with it that we are not expecting from the Bhagavatam the figures, numbers which are very, very close to the understanding of modern science. No, this is an approximation. 27 days. For example, the modern figure is 27.321, and the Surya Siddhanta produces almost the same value, 27.3 days as a sidereal period of the moon. Oh, I am hesitating if I should quote it, but Sadaputta Prabhu quoted it, mysterious as for me, the letter from Srila Prabhupada to Rupanuga Prabhu about the interlacing of planets in different layers of vertical dimension. Okay, because Sadaputta Prabhu states it, I will read it. The planets are arranged in each universe in layers, like the petals of a lotus. But in each layer there is mixed both, mixed both heavenly, hellish, and middle planets. On the outside layer, there are these three kinds of planets. On the middle layer, there are the three kinds of planets, and on the innermost layer, there are found these three kinds of planets. Above these layers, in the center, is the Brahma Loka, where Lord Brahma, the creator, is residing. So the Earth planet and Moon planet are both in the same layer, but the Earth is a middle planet and the Moon is a heavenly planet. So Sadaputta Prabhu makes a conclusion that this letter indicates that the Moon is a heavenly planet, but suggests that it occupies the same level in the vertical direction as the Earth. This is what concerns the Moon, but also there is one point about Moon. I would call this small subsection as 3 speeds of the Moon, because we were talking about 3 speeds of the Sun. So, in verse 8 of the 22nd chapter, Shukadeva Goswami says, in 2 lunar fortnights, the moon travels through the equivalent of a samvatsara of the sun. Samvatsara meaning 1 solar year. We'll talk about it later. In 2.25 days, it passes through a month of the sun, and in 1 day, it passes through a fortnight of the sun. So Sadaputta Prabhu writes that it's not very easy to understand, and honestly saying, I spent maybe about 5 hours also yesterday to make it clear for me. So there are 3 statements. First is in 27 days, the moon travels through the equivalent of the year of the sun. So the moon covers its orbit in 27 days, while the sun covers its circular orbit in one solar year. Also, second statement is basically it's equivalent to the first statement. In 2.25 days, the moon passes through a month of the sun. Well, basically it's the same, but the third statement is not so easy to understand. In 1 day, the moon passes through a fortnight of the sun. So we have to understand here what does it mean here, fortnight of the sun? Because Sadaputta Prabhu writes if fortnight of the sun could be 15 days. 15 days, and as I understand it is justified. This is a note from me in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:11:10. It is said that fortnight is really 15 days. Paksha Pancha Dasha Ahani. So then the duration of the solar year would be 405 days. But Sadaputta Prabhu justifies from some consideration the point that the fortnight of the sun is 13.5 days. 13.5 days. And then the duration of the solar year would be 300.5 days, which is very, very close to the modern value. However, we can see that from any point, the Srimad Bhagavatam is in its own poetic language and symbolical language. It gives the numbers for the characterizing the orbits of the planets, which are quite close. Anyway, they're quite close to the modern values. It's interesting. From my side, I looked into the translation of this verse by Banu Swami in his translation of the commentaries by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And the translation is somewhat different. It says that the moon has quicker speed and lower speed. And when the moon is moving with quicker speed, it covers the sun's year in 2 fortnights, months of the sun in 2.5 days, not 2.25, but 2.5 days. And the fortnight of the sun in 1 day. So not 2.25, but 2.5. I analyzed, as far as I understand Sanskrit, the word sapada akshabhyam. Sapada akshabhyam is the dual number of sapada. Sapada means 1.25. So the dual number would, as to my understanding, correspond to 2.5, 2.5. But I do not think that is very principal, especially because as far as I looked in the commentaries in this book, commentaries of Vaishnava Acharyas on the 5th canto, most of Acharyas say that this number is 135 Gatikas, which basically correspond to 2.25 days. However, I just wanted to mention this fact. And well, I would not elaborate on the commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. It's a little different, with little different figures. But nevertheless, this is a topic maybe for some additional investigation. So this is what about the orbit of the moon. What's about the sun? About the sun also in very poetic language. Shukadeva Goswami says that if this planet does not travel in a crooked way, means not in retrograde, yes, a retrograde way, it crosses through each signs of the zodiac in 3 fortnights, and in this way travels through all 12 signs of the zodiac, one after another. So this is about Mars. Very interesting statement that when it doesn't travel in a crooked way, it crosses through each sign of the zodiac in 3 fortnights. In fact, it means that no, I want to go to next slide. Should I be able to do it? Oh, I did not. I made some mistake in my calculations, but never mind. I will replace it. Okay, so at the top, Sadaputta Prabhu makes the truthful statement, conclusion, consequence from this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, that the speed of Mars, when it does not go in the retrograde direction, would be 2/3, or 0.667 degrees. This is from my side. If we calculate as the average speed, we would get 0.25 degrees per day, according to modern data. And also, Sadaputta Prabhu at the right, he presents the statistics of the different speeds of Mars during the year. With what speed, measured in degrees by day, in general, in percentage, in accordance as a ratio to 100%, in what percentage or what time does it go with a specific speed, which is given in the first column. And Sadaputta Prabhu makes conclusion that mostly the Mars goes with the speeds from 0.65 to 0.75 degrees, which basically is close, it agrees with the statement of this verse. According to this data of Sadaputta Prabhu, I also wanted to calculate the average the average speed of Mars. I didn't correct the error, but I think I can do it right now in MATLAB. I have these numbers A, B, A, and I calculate it as a mean value. No, I should take it as sum, not averaging. Okay, it would be 0.53. It would be 0.53. However, it doesn't really matter if there is some deviation, but this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam gives very close result to what is to the data given by the modern science. Then, okay, this is my preliminary conclusion, but I made mistake in my calculation. I will skip this slide. So, what about other planets? What about other planets above Mars? We will talk about the vertical dimension a little later. But what is about Jupiter? What's told about its period? If its movement is not curved. No. This is not. This one. Jupiter travels through one sign of the zodiac with a period of a parivatsara. Parivatsara is also a year, but Bhagavatam uses different terms. Samvatsara, parivatsara, and so on. We will talk about it later. While denoting the same solar year. Okay, so if it crosses one sign of zodiac during a year, it would mean that its rotational period is equal to 4,320 days. So I did some modeling again in MATLAB. I did some modeling. It's not some not zooming, but sizing. Looks like rectangle, but it should be a square. Okay, so I did some modeling for the. We see the yellow. Of course, it is a sun in the middle, which is rotating around the Earth, and then the Jupiter proceeding its epicycle orbit is by a red moving point. So we have an error in the orbital period, just in 0.3%, just 0.3%. And the same for Saturn. And we see Saturn. Yes. For Saturn, we have a very close situation. The error is also 0.38. 0.38%. The error is very small. Okay, so Siddhartha Prabhu makes a conclusion that it's rather remarkable that the Bhagavatam can express orbital periods with such accuracy using simple expressions such as one sign per parivatsara. And let's finally, maybe I had to place this slide earlier, but anyway. So Shukadeva Goswami explains in the 7th verse of this chapter, the sun god has 3 speeds, slow, fast, and moderate. We're already discussing it. The time he takes to travel entirely around the spheres of heaven, earth, and space at these 3 speeds is referred to by learned scholars by the 5 names: Samvatsara, Parivatsara, Idavatsara, Anuvatsara, and Vatsara. But basically, these are meaning the same. Yes, they all refer, as Sadaputta Prabhu notices, to the year of 360 days. Srila Prabhupada very scientifically writes in his purport that according to solar astronomical calculations, the year extends 6 days beyond the calendar year, meaning 360 days. And according to lunar calculations, each year is 6 days shorter. Yes, we already have seen that the lunar year is 354 days. Really, 6 days shorter. So, and Srila Prabhupada doesn't say it directly, but we should accept as the duration of year a mean value, average value. Yes, 354 and 366. This gives us a value of 360 years. This value is also, this is a quote note from my side, this also is confirmed by the Bhagavatam 3.11.10, where it is said, Paksha Pancha Dashahani, fortnight is 15 days, month is 30 days, and year is 12 months, is 360 days. So 360 days, Siddhartha Prabhu says that it may appear naive to modern science, but there is actually considerable sophistication behind its calculations. They are simply expressed in a way that seems unusual from the Western point of view. I would also add that 360 days in a year is doesn't produce any specific contradiction. And also in this purport, Srila Prabhupada, I didn't read it, Srila Prabhupada says that each, 2 extra months are added with each 5 years. So to keep balance, we need to add 2 extra months during each 5 years. As I understand, it corresponds to what we just had as the months of Purushottama, which is added in 2.5 years, every 2.5 years into the Vedic calendar. Okay, and also we can notice that the circle is divided traditionally, even in modern science, in 360 degrees. So this not a naive, it's not some kind of naive imagination mythology, but it's how Sadaputta Prabhu says, considerable. There is some actually considerable sophistication behind such calculations. Okay, this is as for the orbits of the planets. Yes, this I copied it from Wikipedia. It's interesting that it is said 360-day calendar is a method used in financial markets. It's interesting. In financial markets, the calculations are performed according, even today, according to the 360 days in a year. Financial markets, in computer models, in ancient literature, and in prophetic literary genres. Okay, so finally we approached the central topic of this chapter, if not the whole book. Okay, so Sadaputta Prabhu tells at the beginning of this subsection that the vertical, or in this chapter, I don't remember exactly, the vertical dimension in Vedic cosmology is more than just a third coordinate axis. And this was quote about Satyaloka. I lost the first letter, okay. Please believe me, it was Satyaloka. Why it's not just a third coordinate axis? Because Satyaloka is said to be located at the top of the universe, which has a so Satyaloka is situated at the top of Brahmanda, about 2 billion miles from the Earth. Sadaputta Prabhu says it would be possible by modern means to travel to it in 457 years. However, in many other quotes which are given below by Srila Prabhupada explained that Satyaloka is millions and billions of years away. So it could not be reached by mechanical means, mechanical or materialistic activities, either gross or subtle. So it would give us a hint that the vertical dimension in Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is not just a third coordinate axis, but Sadaputta Prabhu gives to it a very direct mathematical explanation. So how should we deal these heights or famous heights of the planets, Sun, Moon, Venus, Mercury, which are spaced almost equally, in opposed to not in relation to one another? The Sun is 100,000 Yojanas above the Bhumandala. The Moon is 200,000 Yojanas, and so on. Venus 600,000, and etc. So how should we explain it? How should we understand these distances? The Buddha Prabhu tells that these are not the distances from the Earth to the particular planet, as we have seen, for example, in the case of the Sun, which we already have seen that the distance is distance from Earth to Sun corresponds to the modern data, but this height is the height of each planet above the plane of Bhumandala, about the plane of Bhumandala, and we can calculate by multiplying the radius of each planet in geocentric model, the average distance to each planet by the sine sign of the orbital inclination of a particular plane, we can get this height of the plane above the ecliptic plane. And Sadaputta Prabhu identifies here the plane of ecliptic with the Bhumandala. And so the deviations, vertical deviations from the plane of Bhumandala, he identifies them with the heights of the planets which are given in this chapter of 5th canto. So having these distances, I repeated all these calculations, having the average distance to the planet and having its orbital inclination, we can again calculate its maximum distances to the ecliptic. So Sadaputta Prabhu gives them here in the last column for each planet. So, and what we have, because we identify the Bhumandala with ecliptic, the height of the sun would be 0, not 100 sun Yoshnas, but 0. The moon would have a height, according to modern data, about 2,000 Yoshnas, just 2,000 Yoshnas, and Venus and Mercury almost 500,000 Yoshnas, and so on. So how should we deal with this 0 for the sun? Sadaputta Prabhu artificially adds 100 Yoshnas, 100,000 Yoshnas to the height of each planet above the ecliptic, above the level of ecliptic, and we have the following numbers which are given here in the red color. And now we can try to compare them with the Puranic heights, And there are some coincidences, there are some similarities, there are some deviations, for example, as for Saturn, but nevertheless, this is the way how Sadaputta Prabhu makes a correspondence between the heights of the planets given in 5th canto and the planetary heights above ecliptic. I do not give here this correlation coefficient between these two sets of 7 numbers, but it's, as far as I remember, about 0.82. So they are correlated in a good way, except for the Saturn. So Sadaputta Prabhu, in somewhat critically, says to his own approach, he says that one drawback of this interpretation is that the planets do not stay on one side of ecliptic. In the course of their orbits, they move equal distances on either side, following characteristic looping paths. This may seem to be in strong disagreement with the statements of the Bhagavatam, which simply specify fixed heights for the planets. Yes, the Bhagavatam asserts that the height of the sun is 100,000 Yoshnas, but not sometimes 100,000 and sometimes in another time of the year minus 100,000 Yoshnas. However, says Sadaputta Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada has said that planets belonging to different layers in the vertical direction can mix together in one layer. This may also seem contrary to the Bhagavatam. So it's not that Sadaputta Prabhu here says it is so and not in any other way. Yes, he presents his approach, he scientifically justifies his approach, and he also discusses some possible questions which may arise from the scientific community. Okay, what else? These are 2 quotes of the MSU. I think I added them, but I will skip them here. Also, what Sadaputta Prabhu discusses is how should we understand that traditionally I believe in the last column is traditional correspondence of the planets to the days of the week, to the weekdays. Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. But Srimad Bhagavatam, as we have seen, presents it in another sequence. Yes, Venus is almost at the very beginning, for example, not so high as Jupiter, for example. And so there are some deviations. Although the sun and moon are the two first ones, and Srila Prabhupada often said that how you do not understand the cosmology of the fifth canto. First sun because Sunday, then moon because Monday. But Srila Prabhupada did not continue this sequence. Probably I can assume that he used this kind of preaching just to push us out of the mental platform. But anyway, how can we how can we generate, maybe somewhat artificially, but how can we find specifically this order of the planets: Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn? And Sadaputta Prabhu writes about it. He doesn't quote the specific verse. I found it in Surya Siddhanta, that the planets starting from the moon successively upwards are the regions of the months. The planets starting from the Saturn successively downwards are the regions of the hour. What specifically does it mean? If we will arrange the planets in the decreasing order from the Earth, in the decreasing order from of their distances from the Earth, these are data from the Surya Siddhanta, and they correspond to the, I believe they correspond also to the modern science. Yes, we can arrange them in such decreasing order as to their distance from the Earth: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Moon. And we will place them vertically and ascribe each planet to the particular hour of the day. For example, we are starting from Sunday, and we ascribe the Sun to the first hour of Sunday. And then we're in a cyclic way. We are filling these columns by these 7 planets in a cyclic way. So on Sunday we finished with Venus, and then goes Saturn and etc. And so we are going in this. We're continuing this sequence. So, and what we find is that the starting days of each weekday are governed, or how is that told? What planet is a regent? Regent, yes, of the day. This is the same order, standard Vedic, typical, traditional Vedic order of the planets: Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. So in this way, we can restore this traditional sequence of weekdays. And Sadaputta Prabhu presents it. This is how I did for my understanding. Sadaputta Prabhu presents this table, which basically tells about the same. It connects the order of the weekday with the remainder of 330 multiplied by the number of weekday divided by 7. So, shortly about eclipses. In the Vedic literature, it is often mentioned that Rahu causes solar and lunar eclipses by passing in front of the sun or moon. So the Buddha Prabhu doesn't discuss here the position of the modern, so-called modern understanding of Rahu and Ketu, as he did it in the starting chapters of this book. However, we will briefly mention that Ketu and Rahu are associated, identified with the intersection points of the orbit of the moon with the ecliptic plane. It's very nicely depicted here on this picture. And also there is a verse or 2 verses at the beginning of the chapter 24, Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto. Some historians, the speakers of the Puranas, say that 10,000 yojanas below the sun is the planet called a planet known as Rahu, which moves like one of the stars. Formerly, when nectar was being distributed, Rahu tried to create dissension between the sun and moon by interposing himself between them. Rahu is inimical toward both the sun and the moon, and therefore he always tries to cover the sunshine and moonshine on the dark moon day and full moon night. So, such a mysterious statement. Yes, this is how it could be Just a moment. No, it's like a modern. Maybe it corresponds to the modern. I don't remember about the source of this picture which I put here. But I think it is solar eclipse when the moon is situated between the sun and Earth. Okay, but nevertheless, Sadaputta Prabhu tells that the moon is swallowed by Rahu or sun is swallowed by Rahu shouldn't be taken literally. And he refers to the commentaries of Shitkara Swami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that Rahu cannot swallow sun and moon because this actually does not happen because of the distance between them. I found this fragment from the purport by Sridhara Swami. Natu vastuto grasosti grasaha asti durantaratvat. Durantaratvat means because of the distance between them, because they are separated distantly from each other. And the first verse of the 24th chapter corroborates it. Yes, it cannot be, we cannot talk about the swallowing, direct swallowing. So our Vaishnavacharyas say that it doesn't literally happen. So the Putta Prabhu reminds about several analogies from the Islamic tradition and Christian tradition. Here on the left is the picture of angel Shambhurash, who is fighting with the eclipse dragon. Yes, and also Saint George is killing the dragon on the famous picture by Raphael. Also, it seems that this Putta Prabhu makes analogy of this between this dragon and Rahu. And according to Vedic version, Rahu creates a dissemination between sun and moon, and also tries to swallow them in some periodic fashion. So this is what Sadaputta Prabhu tells about the eclipses, and the final subsection of this chapter is the presection of equinoxes. This is a point which is not mentioned in the fifth canto, but Sadaputta Prabhu sheds light on this very interesting topic in connection with the pole star position of the pole star. So yes, he quotes the verse by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I tried to find Bengali version, but did not. My attempts were not successful. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, beings still greater than this have passed away, vast oceans have dried, mountains have been thrown down, the polar star displayed, the cords that bind the planets rent asunder, the whole earth deluged with flood. In such a world, what relish can there be in fleeting enjoyment? What relish can there be in fleeting enjoyments? While reading, I thought maybe he wrote here this verse in English, but because it also very beautifully sounds as for me like in Shakespearean style. Okay, this is verse by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, and we know that according to the interpretation which Srila Prabhupada also often explained, this fragment from MSU movie by Sadaputta Prabhu, the pole star has fixed position and all other planets are moving in like this chandelier way. So the polar star has a fixed position and all other planets and stars are connected with it by Pravaha winds, which makes possible the constant rotation during the year. Okay, but but according to modern understanding, it is taught in modern astronomy that the polar axis of rotation is not fixed. It is supposed to rotate slowly about the axis of the ecliptic at a fixed angle of about 23.5 degrees. I'm not sure. Maybe this is connected with the 23.5 degree declination of ecliptic of solar path to equatorial plane. I'm not sure about this. Is it a coincidence or physically connected directly? One complete revolution is said to take place in about 25 1,770 years. And thus the amount of rotation in 1 year is about 50 seconds of arc. 50 seconds of arc. So this is a picture which explains the essence of this periodic rotation of the Earth. This is not epicidal precession, which we were this year discussing very much in PI. This is another kind of precession, which is combined in its effect to the Earth orbit with the this rotation of the poles, rotation of the axis, how to say, polar axis. Okay. No, this I copied it for me. Just this is not quote from Sadaputa Prabhu. Just another thing. But it's why we say about the no. It's important to understand why we're talking about the precession of equinoxes. The very name. What does it mean? Because it means the slow movement of the points of the spring and autumn equinoxes. These points of intersection of equator with the ecliptic recede along the latter almost evenly towards the Earth in its movement around the Sun. And therefore, each new equinox comes before the Earth. Therefore, each new equinox, so maybe misprint here. Each new equinox comes about 2 minutes and 24 seconds earlier each year. So the error would be 1 degree every 71 year. And approximately the period for this rotation of the polar axis would be 25,000 years. But this something, I believe, maybe I translate this Google Translate from Ukrainian source. I'm sorry. But the precision equinoxes does not mean that the seasons move around the calendar. So we will always have, in Gregorian calendar, we will always have these equinoxes in spring and summer, almost at the same time. Because Gregorian calendar is not, it's, how to say, it doesn't reflect the length of the sidereal, but of the tropical year, which corresponds basically to the interval from equinox to equinox. So this effect of the precision of equinoxes is not actually included in the current, is actually included in our current Gregorian calendar, which we are using now. So, and what conclusion makes Sadaputa Prabhu from this point is that at present, at our days, the pole star is about 1 degree from the north celestial pole. And it will pass very close to it just in 28 seconds around the year 2100. And 1,000 years ago, Polaris was about 6.5 degrees away from the pole. And 1,000 years before that, 1,000 years, what does it mean, 1,000 years before that? Maybe a few thousand years, I should look into the book. However, several thousand years before it, maybe approximately at the time of when Srimad Bhagavatam was composed, it was about 12 degrees away. So since 6.5 degrees is about 13 times the width of the full moon, so it's a very big distance. It's hard to see how Polaris could have been regarded as a pole star prior to 1,000 years ago. So, but maybe another star, of course, was playing the part of the pole star at the time when Srimad Bhagavatam was composed. And Sadaputa Prabhu, yes, Sadaputa Prabhu says that probably, for example, Alpha Draconis star was treated as a pole star when Srimad Bhagavatam was composed. But this doesn't influence the basic of planets revolving around the pole star. No, all remain the same. But maybe another star was playing the part of the pole star at that moment when Bhagavatam was first spoken by Shukadeva Goswami. So, and Sadaputa Prabhu finishes this chapter, this subsection of precision of equinoxes, and also the part of and also the chapter by the such rhetorical, but not just rhetorical question. Could there be some mistake in the scholarly dating of the Bhagavatam, or in the modern reconstruction of the past history of the pole star, or both? Further research may shed more light on this issue. However, Srila Prabhupada has said, whether the Vedic calculations or the modern ones are better may remain a mystery for others. But as far as we are concerned, we accept the Vedic calculations to be correct. And this finishes this chapter. Thank you very much for your tolerance and patience, your kind attention. This is what I wanted to say about this chapter 4 of Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy by Sadaputta Prabhu.
Hi, thank you very much, Dvija Govinda. Thank you for helping us make sense of this chapter. We'll open it up to comments and questions. You can either raise a hand and unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Oh, Prishni's got her hand up. Okay, go ahead, Prishni.
Hare Krishna. Can you hear me okay? Okay,
Yes.
I'll just talk to the microphone. This is a question I'm sure I've asked you before, and I've asked many people, and I haven't gotten a satisfactory answer. So I noticed you had included some new things in your PowerPoint today, so maybe you've thought out this one as well. The Bill of Svarga, the subterranean heavenly planets. And you mentioned fairly early in the talk that they have the same dimensions as given for Bhumandala. And in VCA, Sadaputta does portray them as being discs, flattened discs, kind of like records stacked together, the old LPs stacked together.
Yes.
Yeah, in this picture now they're getting smaller and smaller, but they're still portrayed as discs. But if you remember in Mysteries of the Sacred Universe, he doesn't do that. He has them as small little squares, 10,000 yojanas, 10,000 yojana cubes, which he places, I think, pretty much right under Bardavarsh, actually, in Jambudweep, close to Meru, but a little off to one side. And I've looked and haven't been able to find out any explanation as to why Sadaputta does make that shift. So I thought maybe, I don't know if you've looked at that. It's just been something that I can't figure out.
I don't have answer at the moment. Maybe should be. I will make a note on this. But why should Sadaputta did this shift?
Yeah, it's a mystery from mysteries. Okay, just always like to bring that up in case someone.
Thank you very much, Prishni.
Question. Go ahead. I always have questions. This is actually a comment about the 360-day year, and you were saying how it's an average between the lunar year and the solar year.
Yes.
Another interesting thing, I'm sure you know this, but you didn't mention it. It might not be mentioned here in BCA, it might be MSU. That if you look at the orbits of Saturn and Jupiter, and you did list those, I think one was 10,800 days. You had the orbits of Saturn and Jupiter up on the screen. Do you remember where that was?
Yes.
Yeah. If you notice, if you divide the numbers for those, so if you do 10,800 days, if you round for, I think.
Yes.
That both of those numbers, at least this one here for Saturn, comes out evenly if you divide it by 360. In other words, it's a multiple of 360. And I think, here it is right here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
12. Yes.
So at one point, Sadaputta suggests actually that the year used in the Bhagavatam is not concerned as much with a solar year, but with a year of Jupiter, which represents Dharma. Dharma is the astrological meaning of there's Dharma, and it's ruled by Brihaspati, the spiritual master, the demigod. So I just think that's a little interesting thing that most people don't think of too much.
Yes, it's very interesting. Yes, it's really in the, how to say this, 360 is like proportionality.
It's a magical number.
Yes, magical number. Really. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Very, very nice, Dvija Govinda. Let me ask a naive question that might be on other people's minds. Where does Dhruva live?
Where does Dhruva live?
Yeah.
I would say in Dhruva Loka. Maybe my answer is very naive.
That was a clever answer.
Yes.
But which pole star is that?
But also pole star, yes.
Is it Polaris?
Is it Polaris, yes, or does Dhruva kind of pack a suitcase and move around?
No, I'm not sure. It's in fourth canto. Lord Vishnu says, "I will grant you a plane." But in the Bhagavad Gita, in one of the final purports, I think chapter 18, verse 79, so Prabhupada says he lives in Dhruva Loka. He has his own planet called Dhruva Loka.
Yeah.
Maybe to my shame, I don't have the answer. Maybe Your Holiness Jayadvaita Swami, you will shed light where does really Dhruva live.
Cosmology is not my strong point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Krishna has it.
Years ago, when you first did that mysteries, unraveling the mysteries of the sacred universe here in Alachua, Morali and I cooked up a interesting, though not verified, explanation of that. And the concept being that Dhruva Loka, like all the other lokas, is actually a system of planets, planetary system. So if you think of it like that, then you can see that the pole, as you have the precession of the equinox, actually maps out a 360 circle and 27. Yeah. And so it hits. So there's you can see pictures of this if you go online. Is there's a whole series of stars that kind of fall along that circle. And so if you think of Dhruva Loka as Murali Gopal called it a star cluster or a planetary system, then it kind of solves the whole thing. In one sense, it raises other problems, but it does kind of, and I always think in my mind as, and Sadhuputta does mention this too, that because the word Dhruva means fixed, that if you think of the axis of the equatorial plane rather than and of the ecliptic plane rather than the equatorial plane, it actually pierces right through that circle that would be inscribed in the sky as the precession of the equinox goes on. So I always think of Dhruva Loka kind of as a center of that circle that's of the cluster that the precession passes through. So that's just one way to look at it. But
very satisfying.
Yeah, it kind of gives you a nice feeling, but I don't have any research to back that up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is what we call philosophical speculation.
There you go. Not mental.
And Prabhupada said, don't ask if Krishna's a taste of water, but ask how is he the taste of water? And that's proper philosophical speculation. So we're not asking, does Dhruva have a planet? We're asking, how does he have a planet?
Okay, thank you.
And so that is the proper way to do things philosophically, to speculate. That's proper.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's a good speculation. There must be somebody out there who has some questions from the audience.
Any questions, any concerns, comments?
Disagreements?
Fill some airtime.
Can I have, I'll just make one comment if I may. I hope you don't mind, you can't see me, but that's probably a blessing rather than anything else for you.
Oh, we see your picture, the same.
Yeah, that's the same thing. Just imagine I'm keeping very, very still and it's roughly no, it's just a different, I'm interested in the difference between the subterranean planets being these cubes or being these disks. My understanding is, at least the first time I started, and I noticed this as well, are they disks or, kind of perpendicular but below Bhumandala, or are they cubes? My understanding is whenever they're presented as cubes, they're seen as having a relationship with being under the Earth. Whereas when they were disks, it's almost like they're under Bhumandala as a whole, almost like on a solar system time scale. Whereas the cubes, are underneath the Earth. It's a slightly different context of accessing or understanding the subterranean realms. But of course, ironically, if you stack the cubes down according to the dimensions of the fifth canto, then they actually would be larger than the Earth, I think, or it would be larger than the radius of the Earth anyway. But nevertheless, I just saw them into the differences was something to do with the context of the subterranean realms. One being kind of having a stronger relationship with the Earth, the other being kind of having a relationship with Bhumandala, which is interesting because sometimes Bhumandala and the Earth are interchangeable expressions. And this is what I think is possibly a clue for our mysteries of the sacred subterraneans.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
Another good philosophical speculation. I like it.
Stita D?
Yeah.
Stita D?
Got it? You hear? I'm there.
Yes, yes, we can hear.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, well, since Ron was asking anybody to fill some airtime here, and I'm good at that. I was thinking about the philosophical speculation Brahma was saying, like, how that's a good philosophical speculation because you're taking the philosophy and trying to extrapolate something based on philosophical principles or shastra. Of course, when we use the term speculation, everybody kind of gets a little jumpy. But I'll tell you, even if somebody wanted to criticize that as the jumpy speculation, they're filling it in with their own speculation, like they have direct experience. So if you're going to make an educated guess at what some of these profound descriptions could possibly mean, and how else are you going to parse that except based on what we're dealing with right now in our own realizations and experience? Yeah, sure, definitely ground them in shastric evidence and philosophical perceptions, as opposed to just pulling something off the top of your head and just ideologically, gluing it, it's crazy glue it to your, whatever. We're supposed to do that is try to understand with reasonable arguments what possibly these things could be. It doesn't mean that's all Krishna can do, like he's limited by what we think he could possibly do, but all right, so I filled some time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stita D. Anybody else?
I just wanted to add to the question by Brahmatirtha Prabhu. I found in Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto 29, 40, compared to verse 42, Srila Prabhupada identifies pole star and Dhruvaloka. Oh, no. Sorry, it's obvious. I'm sorry. I thought I found something, but yes, still to be investigated.
Yeah, one key point is that, and Sariputta clearly made this point, there's a lot to still be investigated. And Sariputta, I like to look at it this way, he gave us a roadmap of how to investigate. And one area that he himself expressed great trepidation about was he didn't know Sanskrit. And he said to me many times, he wished he had known it better. He knew Devanagari because he learned that, believe it or not, just from the Bhagavatam class. But knowing Devanagari is not knowing Sanskrit. And we've now assembled a crew of Sanskrit scholars to drill down. To give a simple example is when Prabhupada translates the word universe, let's say sometimes it's Jagat, comes out as universe. Sometimes it comes out as planet. Sometimes other words come out. So we need to drill down to better understand the words in their context. And that is the method used. If you take the word Atma, it has so many different meanings, but it's learned from context. So there is a methodology. There is to drill down. It just requires a lot of hard work. And Prabhupada was very clear in his instructions that he left that for us. It was explicitly clear, and I can go into detail if somebody wants to know more, but he said there's a lot, basically, there's a lot of hard work to do. And Sariputta showed, if somebody said summarize very simply what he showed, I would say that the hard work can pay off.
Thanks, BT. We have a hand raised. Hare Krishna, Ranjit. Go ahead.
Ranjit Prabhu, glad to
Hare
see you.
Krishna. Jai. Thank you. In Bhagavatam and in the Mahabharata, it's described that Arjuna goes to Indraloka and he, and there's various descriptions, Kuvera Loka, this, that he goes to. Is there any correlation that we have? Because, we're living, I assume, on the earthly middle planet, and he's going to Svarga, and there are no spaceships involved. So it seems like there's some kind of has there been any attempt to kind of correlate the geography with the description in fifth canto? That would be my question. I don't know the answer.
That's a Prishni,
Yeah.
that's a Prishni question
Well,
for sure.
it's one I've thought about quite a bit. In order to get to Svargaloka, if you recall, Indra comes down and Arjuna gets into his chariot. And I've always looked at these chariots of the demigods as being spaceships. I mean, it's just one way to look at it, because they do travel throughout space. So if you're really trying to figure out what is a chariot of Indra, well, we don't see Indra. He's incredibly powerful. He controls the weather, right? So the vehicle that he uses is something quite extraordinary. And it wouldn't be surprising that one could, somehow enter into that energy that is in Indra's chariot, and that would take you to different realms. That's how. And also when Arjuna, when he rescues the sons of the Brahmana, and he passes through all the layers of the universe. There he goes. It's not just flying through space. He gets in Krishna's chariot. Now, Krishna's chariot is going to be quite a vehicle, right? So anyway, that's how I think of it.
And sometimes it's described they move at the speed of the mind,
Yes,
which is way beyond warp speed.
Yes, yes, yeah, and the horses are also quite special. If you want to get into Krishna's 5 horses, pretty amazing steeds, not like anything we would see on this planet.
To me, it's like when Arjuna saw the universal form, he turned and said, enough already. Similarly, some of what we're seeing is to humble us. This is beyond what we can know in every detail. And that's a fact. And I just yesterday listening to some cosmologists debating things, and they can't help the smart ones come to the conclusion that it's beyond what we can know for sure. And the really honest ones come out and say that, that we can never know at all. And Sukadev Goswami in the beginning of the 5th canto says, you're never going to understand it all.
And your honest scientists will say the same thing.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we throw up our arms and don't understand some of it. And that was Sariputta's point. Yeah. You understand some of it, like in mysteries, it's just a few mysteries. It's just a few verses. Count them on your fingers. And it showed, yes, there are things you can understand. So I conclude we can understand some things, but until we get our demigod bodies, there's a certain limitations.
Limited also. Said the demigods are limited also.
Demigods are limited also. That is true.
Yes.
But the thing is, it does say that the Pandavas go pretty far up to Kuvera Loka.
Yes.
And without any spaceships. I mean, they're just walking up there. They're walking, and our walking is, so I'm just kind of curious.
Kuvera Loka is real close. That the Yakshas, if you look at, of the heights, they're really close to Dwarf. Probably the closest thing to us would be the yakshas and the rakshasas. And so they're walking, maybe they're as far away as the moon. So we can go to the moon, right? So, well,
Well, Prophet, anyway.
but it's about
make a joke about that, yes.
But we're talking about really small distances, relatively to the universe, and so Yaksha Loka, which is Kuber's Yaksha, it's the head of the Yakshas.
True. Yeah.
Is it's just in relative terms very, very close.
And they might have taken Vamandev type steps. We just don't know. I think we have Krishna Bhajan.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Krishna Bhajan, go ahead.
I just have a different question. Dvija Govinda Prabhu, could you go back to the slide where you were explaining about the order of the planets in the days of the week and the hours of the day, etc.?
That one's confusing.
Yes, Krishna Bhajan Prabhu. Is there some mistake?
No. Okay, so we've got, so let's see, and then if I remember correctly, you were saying that each hour is ruled by a planet in the order,
in decreasing order. Let's see this verse of Spirit Kanta. Plane starting from the moon successfully up the ranges of the months. No, the plane starting from the Saturn successfully downwards are regions of the hour. Yes.
Okay, so starting with Saturn
back downwards. Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon.
Okay, so the according to the Bhagavatam, the distances of the planets from the Earth are Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars.
Yes.
Jupiter, then Saturn, right? And then am I able to share my screen?
Of course, I will.
Okay.
Maybe. Please try. If not, maybe.
Hang on, wait a minute. No, then you'd have to take yours away. Anyway, so no.
Okay, I can disable my screen.
Anyone can start sharing.
Okay. Okay. So if I go to now, there's my diagram.
Little green box at the bottom there, share screen.
Right. So do you see that
box?
Do you see this?
Yeah. See, I told you.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is different from what you did. What I read from Sariputa's Vedic Cosmography and Astronomy was that the each month is ruled by a planet.
Yes.
And there are 30 days, and each day is ruled by a planet. So if you draw like a calendar of the 30 days in each month, so this would be moon, the month that the moon is presiding over, and you put them in that same order that you were talking about. Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, Sun, Moon, etc. Then the first, he explained that the first day of each month is ruled by the same planet as the month is ruled by. So when you highlight the first day of each month, then you get Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, etc. So then you get that same order of planets as far as they are distant from the Earth. So I would like to, if you don't mind, kind of combine what you did with this, if that's okay, in what I'm working on at the moment, if you don't mind. And I'll quote you.
Of course. Thank you, Krishna Bhajan Prabhu. So
but
the
then-
Prabhu mentioned about it in the 4th chapter, but both about weekdays and hours, and also he mentioned the months and weekdays, but he didn't cover it. Just very briefly mentioned, and you kindly explained also this part. Thank you very much.
But then my question at the end, though, is, and I asked the same question to Sariputta, was, okay, what about the, like, okay, so now according to the Bhagavatam, we have Mercury closer to the Earth than Venus. And he was at the time toying with different ideas as to why this would be. One of which was he was quoting Velikovsky, who wrote Worlds in Collision, that at some point maybe Mercury's orbit was changed. But then there's also is there any explanation you can think of as to why, since everything else, you know, there's so much astronomy in the Bhagavatam that coincides with modern astronomy, that why would they think that Mercury was closer to the Earth than Venus, when simple observation would tell them that, you know, it is how it is now? Or is there some other reason that I'm not understanding why they would put the planets in this order?
I would say, Krishna Bhajan Prabhu, that the mean distance to Mercury is lower in the last column. Here in the last column, mean distance is lower, little lower. In fact, you see, some fractions of percent.
I thought it might be something like that.
Yes, but the minimum distance of Venus is, of course, closer to the Earth than that of the Mercury.
So it's because Mercury is going around faster, so it spends more time closer to the Earth.
In fact, yes.
Yeah, than Venus does. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Krishna Bhajan.
But that's also, you know, these Vedic astronomers knew what they were talking about.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice. Okay, we have Krishna Kirtan Das. Hare Krishna, you can unmute.
Hare Krishna. So I'm just thinking about going back to the point of Dvija Loka versus Polestar. So the other Prabhupada mentioned earlier. So we have, you know, Indra Loka and Kuvera Loka, and all these Loka, they are not identified with any particular, you know, celestial body. But somehow Chandra Loka is identified with the moon, right? But you know, even the Chandrayana, you know, going there to the moon is now finding Chandra Loka there, obviously. So just a question, you know, to what extent, like, how is Chandra Loka associated with the moon? So one devotee, I think, once was asking, what if, you know, it's not physically not associated at all? Like Chandra Loka is just a particular celestial platform and nothing to do with this moon. Then I thought, but there has to be some connection, because all the, you know, Vedic astrology, you know, based on influence of the moon, the chart is based on the, you know, physical observation of where the moon planet actually is, right? So there is a physical connection there, but it's also not directly there just because, you know, when we go there, we don't actually find it. So similarly, I'm thinking, you know, between Dvija Loka and the Polestar, maybe it's also some kind of very, you know, subtle connection. It's there, but it's also, you know, not there. So that's just my thought on that.
Thank you, Krishna Kirtan.
Radha Mohan.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow on what was just said about the moon and Dvija Loka. I think I remember Vrishni talking about this. It was an analogy she gave, and indeed Sadaputta's given on this. Imagine you've got like a 20-story building. Imagine you're in Manhattan, and your only perception, your only gross perception is maybe the first floor, the ground floor of Manhattan, let's say, of anywhere in three-dimensional space. The demigods, they're able to access all the floors, you know, the 10th, the 12th, the 13th floor. So similarly, someone can go to the moon in a gross physical body or with a probe or a satellite or something and get to see the ground level, get to see how things are. But the higher beings, is where the demigods and yogis, they're able to see the moon from a higher perspective. They're able to go there, drink somaras and have a great time and everything else. And I think, I mean, like I said, that's the understanding of the moon. But in terms of Dvija Loka, like I said, I mean, you've got, was it 14,000 years ago, Thurbin was the pole star, or whatever it was, not the pole star, the North Star. So yeah, so that's even more mysterious than the moon itself, given that Dvija Loka is also supposed to be situated in Vaikuntha from a spiritual point of view as well. So yeah, but I would say it's something to do with that, the idea you've got this subtle, the more subtle you are, the more flaws you can access, as it were. And plus you have this vertical dimension understanding as well there.
So once you have the fourth dimension there, then any possibility can be there, right? Because you can imagine you can go to different buildings, but when you go up, all the elevator can lead to the same place. For example, they can build it that way. So you could have something in the fourth dimension, but linked to multiple spots on the third dimension. So or vice versa, you could have to go the other way. One spot on the third dimension can lead to many different spots on the fourth dimension. So once you go there, I guess there's so many ways to speculate.
Yeah, there's so many ways. I just wanted to kind of remind people, actually, there was a devotee giving class at the Manor the other day, because it's the 50th anniversary since the Prabhupada installed the deities here, back to Manor. And one of Prabhupada's disciples was saying, Prabhupada, when he first came to Bhaktivinoda Manor, he was actually talking to ghosts, because you can imagine there's a lot of ghosts in England, I guess, in these old houses, and you would actually have conversations with ghosts and tell them to go away. And of course, his disciples couldn't see it because Prabhupada had this more subtle vision. So automatically, even when you're dealing with something as mundane as ghosts, it's about the ability of the perceiver, that the more, someone who's perhaps more subtle consciousness or high consciousness perhaps can actually see things we cannot. So what to speak of other realms in the universe? But I don't think this is speculative. I actually think that I think it's built on fairly solid ground, this type of conversation.
Yes. Sita De Muni?
Yeah, if I can build on that a little bit. We just go to Vrindavan, India, and we readily accept there's layers upon layers of perception there. You can look it up in Google Maps. You could just be a materialist. You can be a bhakta and, hey, man, look at all the temples. You can be a, moderately absorbed devotee and you're feeling some spiritual rejuvenation. You could be a pure devotee and the leelas are just happening as you speak. So then from the scientist perspective, or just anybody, you look at something without untrained eyes and you don't see it. Like an auto mechanic will look at your car and he sees, that noise means so many things, and you're looking at it, I don't know what it means, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of ways to parse access to perception.
Hey.
Or scientists looks at astronomers, they look at star charts and they see so many things, and we're looking at it, look at all the dots, or I am.
Thank you very much. Okay, unless there are any other questions or comments, we'll close this meeting. Thank you very much again, Dvija Govinda.
Let's announce what's next before we close.
Okay. So
just 1 minute,
yes.
if possible. I'd like to say I invited to this meeting my friend from Ukraine, Alexander Prabhu. If you hear us, I just wanted to introduce you. A very nice devotee, and who specializes also in many areas, including cosmology, but maybe he doesn't hear me. Alexander Prabhu, I just wanted you to introduce you. Alexander Prabhu, he was going to the United States, especially to meet with Drutakarma Prabhu and Sudaputa Prabhu once. He's my friend.
Long time ago.
Long time ago.
You are both invited to stay in this very building, our BI headquarters, and as soon as sanity goes to your part of the world, we hope you can come.
That'd be nice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Are you also in Kiev, Alexander? Where are you located?
Where are you located?
So actually, yes, at the moment in Azerbaijan.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
yes, still far.
Point, yeah.
But very soon I will come back in Ukraine.
Okay.
Okay, welcome. Thank you for joining us, Alexander.
Thank you. Thank you. Dvija Govinda Prabhu invited me.
So if I could get your email address, and I'll put you on. I don't think I have you in our mailing list, so maybe Dvija could send me his email address.
Yes,
Would be
I'll
happy.
get
yes,
you on
yes.
our list,
I will
and then
send
you'll-
details
you'll
because
get all-
Alexander Prabhu can make real contribution to the BI
Yes, that would
activities,
be
I
very
believe.
nice. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Excellent, a new friend. Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you all for your attendance. And again, thank you, Dvija Govinda, for helping us make sense of this chapter. Thank you all for your comments. We will be back in 2 weeks on September 9th for the next chapter. That's chapter 5, the empirical case for the Vedic world system. That's going to be presented by Krishna Kripadas, Christopher Beadle. He has received a BA in computer science from Brown University, and he took initiation from Satsvarupa Goswami in 1989 or 98?
No.
89.
No. much
Yeah.
earlier.
98. Okay.
No.
He also assisted.
Yeah, very early.
He also assisted
70s.
Sariputta Das in the production of books and videos on science and Krishna consciousness for 17 years, and he's been working with the BIHS since its inception in 2015. So we will welcome him next week and move on to the next chapter. Also, this meeting and all our prior lecture series meetings are on our YouTube channel, the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies. So you can access them there. Thank you very much and have a great weekend. We hope to see you again soon. Yes. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.